Hi everyone, welcome to Law School 101 Night 2 with our wonderful alumni. We will get started shortly. If you will just make sure that you stay on mute, and more directions to come in just a little bit. If you also would like to go ahead and change your view to speaker view, that will be really helpful for you tonight so that you don't have to be seeing a ton of names and you can see who is actually speaking tonight. And we'll get started shortly. All right, I think that's the majority, so let's go ahead and get started. Good evening and welcome to Law School 101, Night 2, sponsored by your Vanderbilt Alumni Association and Vanderbilt University Law School Admissions Office. I'm Sarah Whitney Anderson from the Alumni Association, and I'll be moderating the panel tonight. I'm so excited to host this distinguished panel of alumni. They have all graciously accepted to be here and give you the inside scoop about making the decision to attend law school, getting an edge in the admissions process, and then expanding on the law school experience for whichever law school you decide on. Students, please be attentive as these alumni have given up their evening to be with you. We will be recording tonight's meeting, so feel free to turn off your camera if you do not want your face to be shown. Please stay on mute as our panelists speak and put away your phones and be as attentive as possible. You may also want to turn to speaker view so you can see which panelist is speaking at that time. If you have any issues, feel free to put them in the chat box as well. Now, before I introduce everyone, I just want to make sure we have no more students coming in. All right. So our alumni tonight, Aaron Ogunro is an associate attorney in Chicago at the law firm Jerem Law. He is a proud double door as an undergraduate and law school alumnus of Vanderbilt. His practice primarily focuses on data privacy, intellectual property matters, and has worked with creatives, entrepreneurs, and large corporations. Ariana Schaefer graduated from Vanderbilt in 2014 with a major in political science. Upon graduation, she worked at PwC before attending Berkeley Law. She currently works as a general corporate attorney at the San Francisco office of Cooley LLP, which has multiple offices all around the world and over 900 lawyers globally. She focuses on general, corporate, and securities law and represents both private and public companies in a range of industries, as well as investors and underwriters. Finally, we have Christina Samuels, graduated from Vanderbilt University cum laude in 2007, where she majored in art history and was a member of the Kappa Alpha Theta sorority. In 2011, she graduated summa cum laude from Tulane School of Law with a certification of specialization in civil law studies. After graduation, Christina joined the private New Orleans law firm Sher Garner Cahill, Richter Klein, and Hilbert, where she represented commercial and individual clients in the areas of real estate and general business transactions. In 2016, Christina left Big Law to serve as an in-house counsel for Tulane in her role as Associate General Counsel. She represents the university in a wide range of legal matters, such as those pertaining to intellectual property, research compliance, government investigations, and litigation. Now we will move into the wonderful questions you have all submitted. Thank you so much for that. We should also have some time at the end if you do not get your question answered right now, and you could submit them via the chat box and you can send them to me privately. So how about we get to know our speakers? So the first questions as we get to know them is, why did you choose to attend law school and what were you looking for in a law school? Why don't we start with you, Christina?
Okay, well, why did you attend law school is one of my favorite questions. We were just joking beforehand. So I decided to go to law school because, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do after I graduated from college. I was an art history major, And I knew I did want to go to grad school. And I decided to go to law school, and it just worked out. And second question is, why did you decide where you wanted to go? Is that right? So I knew that I wanted to end up back in New Orleans. I'm from New Orleans, after 4 years in Nashville. And I actually took a year after in between college and law school in New York City. And so I came back to New Orleans and came to Tulane Law. And I've been here ever since.
Yeah, I mean, I could also mirror that a little bit as well. I think going to law school was not really on my radar till senior year, probably of college. I actually went to the same exact talk, I think, senior year, and had some cool panelists. And I thought I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my career right afterwards, right after I graduated. But it seemed that I wanted to go to graduate school, whether it was, a glutton for um, academics or something. I'm not sure what it was, but decided I wanted to go back to school, and I thought law school was probably the best choice for me. And that's really why I wanted to do that. Yeah.
Ariana, did you want to share next?
Yeah, I can share. I went to law school a year after working. I graduated from Vandy in 2014 and then worked in consulting for a year. And I really liked the client interaction, but the work wasn't as stimulating as I thought it was going to be. So I, just kind of thought about what parts of it I liked, what parts of it I didn't like, and that kind of led me back to law school. I had initially thought I would go straight through, thought I'd give consulting a try, gave it a try, didn't work out, went to law school out in Berkeley, and that's how I ended up there as well.
Great. So the next question is, what kind of classes did you take in extracurricular activities, maybe even leadership roles, did you have that best helped you when going into law school?
I can go ahead and answer this. Again, I was an art history major, and I remember, that's maybe not the traditional path, going into law school. And I really, I think a liberal arts education, just in general, art history is so like analytical, and it's, making, arguments and whatnot based on paintings and how you interpret them. It's like so not black and white. There's so many gray areas. I really think that it prepared me for law school. And I think that, you don't have to be, a pre-law type of major, poli-sci, the traditional avenues in order to do well in law school. So that was my experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, like for me, I was an econ and MHS major, and I didn't really substantively, I'm not sure the classes that I took would have helped me for law school at all, but I think the best classes that were for law school were the ones that like required some discussion and some thinking on your feet. I think those are probably the best classes that will kind of replicate a law school feel, because you're always going to have to answer questions on the fly, or on an exam you're going to have to create, like you have to deal with a new type of situation. So I think those type of classes are the most helpful. And otherwise, and during the summer, always trying to find some sort of internship that might relate to the legal field might be helpful. I interned at a law firm for one summer, and that kind of also helped me think about law school as a possible option. So
I didn't intern at a law firm before going to law school, and I really wish I had. I think that, just after law school, the law firm life was so new to me. There's so, the concept of what a paralegal does and everything is so foreign that I really think that Aaron has a good point, that's, if you are able to over the summer to work somewhere, I think that would really help you give a feel of if you like that, type of job, and also just understanding, what they do and whatnot. I agree.
Yeah, and I was a pretty typical pre-law major. I did political science. I interned at a law firm. But I would say I actually think my year of work is what prepared me best for law school, because it was I was on a schedule for the first time. College is great because you can kind of create your own schedule and get to see your friends when you want and take lunch when you want. And then when you're working, it's most likely on someone else's time. And so there's certain expectations, and just getting used to that responsibility of having to be somewhere and be accountable for certain hours of the day was actually really helpful. I think it helped me with studying. I was a lot more regimented and just used to having a set routine. And just in general, I was just a lot more comfortable. I think being around, different people, kind of treating my professors like clients and being super professional in class, because I do think it's a little different dynamic, graduate school versus undergraduate. And I think working really helped prepare me for that more than any classes or extracurriculars in undergrad.
Great. All right, so now we're going to move into the next section, which is your law experience. Could you all talk about your experience in choosing your law school, and then also how did you choose what kind of practice you wanted to pursue? Aaron, you want to go first?
Sure. I think the main thing I thought about when going to law school is I wasn't sure where I wanted to be after I graduated law school. I'm from Chicago, so that was a possibility, and I ended up coming back here. But I also thought about the West Coast. I thought about maybe like Boston or something. So I think the biggest thing for me was being able to go to a school that would put me wherever I wanted to go after the end of the 3 years. So that's what I essentially, that's probably the main reason I chose the law school, which I went to. And when it came to what I actually practiced, that was all over the board. When I when I started law school, I'd worked as well as a year before going to law school, and I did some like antitrust work, some competition work, and I thought that's what I wanted to do after I graduated. Ended up I didn't take any classes in that, mainly because I was frightened of the teacher that that was teaching it. And so I ended up going on like a trademark and copyright law path all the way through law school. And then as soon as I started working, I got that opportunity to do trademark and copyright law. Ended up not loving it entirely as much as I thought I would. And I ended up, there happened to be a partner that joined literally like a month or 2 months before I did, who happened to be in data privacy, and she had tons of work and no associate to do it. So I ended up getting a lot of the data privacy stuff, and I actually ended up really liking it. So that's kind of how I've fallen into this practice that I'm in.
Yeah, so I kind of talked earlier about how I'm from New Orleans and knew I wanted to end up here, which is one of the reasons why I chose Tulane. And then, in law school, I kind of realized that litigation, traditional litigation, although I do it now, probably wasn't for me. And so I decided to do transactional law, more contracts, real estate type of work. And then after practicing for about 5 years, I had this opportunity to go in-house, and it's been a great transition. I've got 2 small kids, and so it's a little bit more work-life balance. And yeah, so that's it for me.
Yeah, and for me, I always wanted to be in California. So when I was looking at law schools, I focused on that coast. Also, taking the bar is not something I plan to do more than once if possible. So if that's something, well, you would have to be thinking about it if you want to be a lawyer, but depending on where you want to practice, sometimes it's advantageous to go to school in that state. I know at least in California, because it is a pretty particular bar that a lot of our law school classes were geared towards certain California laws that you would have to know. And not to say you couldn't learn them on your own, but it's just helpful to have that reinforced early on. And then why I chose corporate law in particular, I work with a lot of startups and technology companies. When I was in consulting, that was my area. I was in entertainment and technology. And so a lot of my clients were in those spaces, and I really enjoyed learning about what they were doing and, the problems they were trying to solve, and just found that type of work really interesting. And so thought, I want to work with the same clients just from a legal lens versus a consulting lens. And so that's what ended me in San Francisco in that practice.
Great, thank you. So we had a lot of questions on preparing for law school, and especially since some of y'all have already spoken about they took a year in between before going to law school. How did you make those choices? What suggestions do you have in preparation for LSAT, interviews, the application, anything around that? Ariana, do you want to start?
Sure. So like I said, not to be a broken record, but I worked for a year. And so that was what propelled me to law school pretty quickly, because after a couple of months of working, I realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so for me, it was a pretty easy decision. I think as far as what can prepare you, I remember going to these talks in college, and there are always people that said you should take political science classes, or you should do this or do that. But I really just think you should do what you're passionate about. I think especially now it's very competitive to be, at a big law firm or doing a lot of different types of work at law firms. And I think one of the things that helps set you apart, either in your essay to law school or when you're interviewing to get a job after law school, assuming you want to go to a firm or, quite frankly, any area of the law, is just, having things you're passionate about and having things you can talk about. Honestly, the interviews I've had with people where they just tell me that they've taken a bunch of political science classes and watched The West Wing are like not my favorite. I think it's more the people that are genuine, like maybe they're really into winemaking, or they have this other hobby and you can just connect with them on a level. We're just in the people business, so it's really just about how you are as a person. And I think that's the soft skills is what I would focus on more, because the reading and the writing obviously are important, but law school will train you how to do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that you should take whatever classes, you're interested in, that you think you'll do well in because you are interested in them. I think that's, making good grades in college because you took classes and you majored in what was best for you is better than, what you might think of as the traditional route to law school because you think that's what, law school would want on your application. Definitely agree.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with like follow your passions or whatever. Yeah, I think that's definitely important because even when you become a practicing lawyer or you're in law school, you still need to, you still have interest in something besides law as it is. So, being able to write about that in an essay is important. And when it comes to preparing for the LSAT or things like that, I think I tried to just mirror what helped me taking the ACT going to college. I knew that I had a tutor for the ACT, and I thought, I'm not going to waste money on and like taking the test another third time if I had to. So I went in and I got a tutor to begin with, and I practiced it that way. I think just sticking to what you know yourself, like don't base it on what you hear from other people and what they did. Just focus on your type of studying habits and your type of writing style if it comes to the essays or whatnot. Like be yourself, I think is most important.
Sounds good to me. Since we are speaking to all Vanderbilt students and you all went to Vanderbilt in some capacity, could you talk about the knowledge and the skills that you gained while at Vanderbilt, whether in law school or an undergraduate? But what are some of the knowledge and skills that you learned while at Vanderbilt they can translate into a law career?
Yeah, I'll start on this one. I think Vanderbilt's a pretty social school, which I think definitely helps, whether that's being able to answer questions in class in a law school setting, or if you are if you're networking. I think just having that kind of collegiate atmosphere at Vanderbilt, I think definitely allows you to branch out and be able to discuss different types of things. Like we're talking earlier about, the liberal arts education, like being able to talk about many different things, talk to people from different backgrounds, being able to just network and discuss things. I think that's probably the biggest biggest aspect of probably what Vanderbilt gave me going on after I graduated.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, a lot of it's just the ability to be around a diverse group of people, have, interesting conversations, learn how to debate a little bit or, critically think about things. And I think that's all stuff you obviously learn in the classroom, but also just being at a diverse place like Vanderbilt and surrounded by intelligent people and like-minded people, probably, the most beneficial thing going to a school like Vanderbilt.
I agree and have nothing to add.
Great. The next section is now talking about your law careers. So we had lots of students curious about what kind of career opportunities can you get with a law degree. You were all in different capacities, but maybe also talk about, since our undergraduate students might not know, but what does a law degree afford you to do? What are all the opportunities that can do? Christina, you want to start with this one?
Sure. So, I have a lot of my classmates from law school that are doing all kinds of different things. They're not all lawyers. Some have started companies, some have just all kinds of things. So I think that a law degree can, open doors for you, and it just changes the way that you kind of think about life and whatnot. For me, I took the traditional route and went to a big law firm. And then I really never thought I would go in-house. I thought that, corporate law was forever. And I think that opportunities come along the way, and just to take them when they do come.
I think that I pretty much mirror. I mean, I'm in a smaller law firm now, which I really liked. I always thought I'd probably go to some like big law firm and be there for X amount of years. I'm not really sure, but I'm at a small law firm right now, and I really like it. So it's one thing to understand is that there's different sizes of law firms. I guess that I think we have 10 attorneys at our firm, and we do mainly IP and data privacy stuff. So there's definitely like specialization, smaller firms that just specialize in different areas. There's also big firms that do everything, which is good. And same thing that Christina said is that, all my friends are either in government, some people are in, public interest law. Some people just went directly in-house at different companies. So like, I think there's a lot of options, and it's always useful. I think even if you're dealing with a landlord or something, I think being able to just look over a lease or something is helpful. Like I think you probably have more understanding of those type of documents after going to law school, which it's a little added benefit. I don't think that should be the only reason you go to law school. I think it gives you added benefits.
I think, yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I think you guys covered it.
All right, really quickly, I've had 2 students email me that they're having a couple issues and they're on Vanderbilt's campus. Is anyone else having any issues with their Zoom? It says that they're being kicked out. If you'll just give me like a thumbs up or put in the chat. Anyone else is having any issues? That way I can just message IT if y'all need any. Doing okay? Okay, we'll move on to the next question, but let me know if there's any issues. I do know that, yes, VUNet has been having some issues the past couple of days. I thought they resolved it yesterday, but quick, one more plug. We are recording tonight, so if for some reason you get kicked out, just email me tomorrow and I'll make sure you get the video. Okay, next question. How did you decide on going to law school over grad school if you did make that consideration?
I really struggled with whether to get a JD MBA when I was in law school. I thought about it, and, Tulane has a 4-year program, and I think I just wanted to be in grad school longer, possibly, and ultimately decided not to, just because I decided I wanted to go into law. I wanted to go practice law. I think that if my classmates that did get a JD MBA, most of them actually are not lawyers. They went and did other things. So I opted out of it just because I decided that I wanted to pursue law. And maybe it was not worth it.
Yeah, I was similar. I thought about a JD MBA, but just the time and cost benefit analysis didn't really work out in my head. I think if you can get both, then if you don't mind taking an extra year, or if you get a scholarship or something, I think both are helpful. I actually, a paralegal at my firm has been working there for 2 years, and that deterred her from law school. Now she's going to business school. So, that's a good reminder that if you think you want to be a lawyer, it might be worth being a paralegal or having some introduction to the law, because I don't think it's as glamorous as people think it is. And it might be that you want to do business school or another type of graduate school. So definitely worth kind of exploring all your options.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with Ariana on that, is that if you can get experience before, I think it was like having that year in that legal department where I worked it was huge. Just understanding like what lawyers are and what they do. It's, even if you think sometimes, having to deal with the clients is always sometimes cool, but most of what you do is going to be the same regardless of if the client's super cool or just like totally lame. So I think um, that also goes into some sort of thought analysis. But I didn't think of any other type of graduate school, so I guess I can't really I don't have anything to say about that.
All good. Next question. In choosing a law school, how did you navigate the balance between affordability, prestige, and reputation?
So I will say that I was surprised when I started practicing in New Orleans. I thought that, no matter if you went to the best law school, then you would, have the most job opportunities. But it turns out, schools, if you do very well at schools that are maybe not as prestigious, and you probably have more job opportunities than if you don't do well at a more prestigious law school, if that makes sense. And so I think it's really, really difficult because you don't know how you're going to do in law school until you're in law school, and how you did in college is not necessarily an indicator of doing law school, although I'm sure all the Vanderbilt students are going to do wonderfully in law school. But it is kind of tricky it's tricky to navigate. I think it just depends on your situation, where you want to end up in your city, your affordability or whatnot. I think it's maybe a personal decision, but it's not always necessarily just the best law school.
Yeah, and I think as well, I was shocked at the scholarship that law schools were handing out upon like application. So I think if you're worried about the cost now, obviously there's the embedded cost of taking the LSAT and have the applications and whatnot. But I think if you're worried about the cost of law schools, I was shocked at the amount of money that they were giving out for. I wasn't like the most fabulous candidate for any of the law schools, I think, but I was really impressed by the money that they were giving. So if you're questioning that, you can always play that type of game towards the end of seeing how much a school will give you for affordability reasons.
Yeah, I think you guys covered it.
The next question is, what do you suggest for an undergraduate student to start doing if they're considering law school, but they're still unsure?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I was pretty much going to copy what Ariana said earlier, is that like working before law school, I think is definitely helpful if you're not sure if law school is good for you. I also think that networking as soon as you can with other lawyers is really helpful. I still talk to some lawyers that I talk to in undergrad, and they're helpful and able to make their connections after law school if you're looking for a job or looking for a summer internship during law school. So I think definitely reaching out and talking to people saying you're interested, whether it's using your alumni network or some other network you have.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll just add, because I'm the first attorney in my family, so I know when people are like, oh, just work for a lawyer. And, some people have a million lawyers in their family and people they know in their network that they can tap into. And some people might be first generation and not have access to that. So I think, with social media, with LinkedIn, with Vanderbilt, there's so many creative ways that you can have access to attorneys. So just not to put it out there that it's so easy to work at a law firm or shadow an attorney, but you'd be surprised. A lot of professors at Vanderbilt know attorneys. You could go to the law school and see what kind of opportunities there might be. Even working for something like the ACLU or another organization that has attorneys, maybe not working directly with attorneys, but doing research and writing, and then you could offer to shadow the attorney or sit in on different meetings. So there's definitely creative ways to go about it. I think I was fortunate in law school to work at a law firm, but that was just by me sending in my resume on a Craigslist ad and continuously following up and saying how interested I was. It wasn't a family connection or through anyone in my network. And so I just want to highlight that because it's definitely possible. It might take a little work and networking, but if you're at Vanderbilt, you're obviously capable of doing that, and definitely recommend trying to.
I agree.
All right, before we get into our last couple of questions, students, if you want to go ahead and start sending me your questions in the Zoom chat. It's easier if you send them to me privately, but if you'll start sending them in, that will be great. Okay, our next question is, oh, I lost my place. Apologies. What do you wish you would have known before applying to law school? You could also say before going into your first job, either one.
So the question's, what do you wish you knew before law school?
Yes. What could you go back and tell yourself?
I mean, that you're going to be tired a lot. I don't know. You're going to read a lot. I think it's just appreciating the journey. I think not that Legally Blonde is a great example of law school, but I will say her trajectory of, and I don't know, you guys are younger than I am, so maybe this movie reference is not helpful, but I think the trajectory of at first being so just overwhelmed and you're oh my gosh, I'm in this class with all of these people who are so intelligent. The professor's just randomly calling on me. I don't even know how to read this case or brief this case. And then by your third year, you're oh, I don't even have the book for class. I'm just going to wing it when the professor calls on me. Not that I recommend that, but I'm just saying that it can be the progression of how law school is. And so I think it's just really easy to get discouraged really early on. I think especially coming from Vanderbilt, I was used to being around smart people, but I also just feel like Vanderbilt is such a nurturing place and professors really care and you really get out of it what you put into it. So I felt super prepared and I knew I was this great student, yada, yada, yada. And then you go there and everyone's had the same experience. That's why they're in law school. So I think imposter syndrome is something that a lot of people deal with. I definitely dealt with it at times. So it's just being confident in yourself. And once you make the decision to go, just realizing, this is where I'm going to be for the next 3 years, making the most of it. Definitely network, because you never know where your classmates are going to end up. And you never know when you might want to go to a different job or end up in a different city. And it's great to have that network. And that's also to say, treat it as a job and be very professional, because that's the, image your classmates are going to have of you. So if you are trying to interview at a firm they're at, you want them to give you a good recommendation. Well, if you were, sleeping in class or whatever, they're not going to do that, versus if you've always been professional and just overall a good classmate.
Yeah, I always say that law school is a marathon, not a race. So kind of, what Ariana was just saying, like, don't get discouraged in the beginning. And also everyone puts so much emphasis on your first year, but you want to do well your second and third year as well. And I think as Ariana was saying about, Vanderbilt is such a nurturing place. They're all of a sudden ranked and it's, the competition and whatnot. And don't let that get the best of you. You want to treat everyone, professionally, just to remember that.
Yeah, I think also is getting used to your own type of schedule. Just I think maybe I said this earlier, but like also ensure that you're doing things your own way. Just because someone is in the library at midnight doesn't mean you have to be there at midnight. You have your own schedule. I think again, like working beforehand, having a 9 to 5 schedule time like for like school kind of helped. And being that was my type of schedule that I want to prefer, is that I would rather just get it done during the day rather than having to be up all night trying to do something. I mean, that doesn't say that you might have to do that come exams or whatnot, but I think just sticking to your own schedule, sticking to what you know yourself, kind of keep your blinders on in that sense. Is don't really fall into these like law school traps of saying like, oh, I was up all night in the stacks in the in the library doing this and this. Like if someone says that, maybe that's how they work the best, but it doesn't mean that you have to do that as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that, whatever works for you and whatever has worked in the past, don't, if everyone's saying, oh, we need to be in a study group or, oh, whatever works for other people, it's not necessarily going to work for you. So just stick to what works for you.
Great. We'll go ahead and start moving into this student question since we've gotten a few. The first one is, what are some hidden law school etiquettes? Aaron, do you want to kick us off? Also, if I ever call on one of y'all and you don't have an answer, that is also fun.
Yeah, I think the biggest one, especially for your first year, is making sure you're prepared for class. Um, I think kind of what Ariana said earlier is that like if you like having the network like continuing after law school, if you weren't prepared for class or like you were kind of, I don't know, you didn't do the reading or something and you're trying to fumble off an answer like that, I think one etiquette is just being able to just do the work and make sure that that you're prepared for the different things that come up in class. I mean, it doesn't mean you know every answer in class. I mean, it's impossible to know every answer in class. So that's one aspect. But I think just being able to say that you're prepared, that you put in the effort, and I think even if you don't know the answer, that comes out eventually that you did the work. So.
Anyone else? We can move on to the next one. Yeah. Okay. For someone who's getting a late start to the law process, what do you recommend as next steps? How do we best research law schools and learn more?
I don't know if late is like late in life or like late in the semester, but I'll try and answer both, I guess. I guess if I don't think there's any late start, I think you should go when you're ready. So, and it goes to Aaron's point of don't do what everyone else is doing. Just because everyone goes to law school right after undergrad doesn't mean that's the path that works for you. Or just because everyone took the LSAT in the fall doesn't mean you can't take the February LSAT. I know when I was studying for it, everyone said the February one was the hardest because they have experimental questions or something like that. So I think it's just, being comfortable and what you're comfortable with and knowing and having a plan for yourself. I think it's great to have mentors or peers that you can like bounce ideas off of or talk to about it. But I don't think you should let any one person, especially your parents, because I know that can be a big area of, stress for a lot of potential lawyers. My parents have been telling people I was going to be a lawyer since I was 3. So I definitely feel that, if I hadn't gone to law school, I don't know what would have happened. But yeah, I think just do it on your own time. If someone was referring to later in life, I similarly do not think that is an issue. I had classmates that were parents. I had classmates that were, this was a second career. or third career. And so again, it just goes to like do what's right for you, and it's your journey, it's your life, your career. So, you know, no one can tell you what's right or wrong.
I also think there's a lot of value, at least for me, and it sounds like some of the others, you know, taking a year off, you know, not going straight to law school. So if you're talking about late in the, you know, your college journey, well, if you don't go straight from college to law school, I think that that's, you know, that's okay. And I think there's actually some value in it.
Yeah, and I would say like, just if you're questioning certain school of whether you think one's better for you or one's not, I think again I'm sure there's been some Vandy undergrad alum that has been to any law school in this country. So I'm sure if you reach out to them, they more likely than not will probably respond back to you and be honest. I know if someone responded were asking me about how my experience in law school was, I would give them the pros and cons about going to Vandy over some other law school. So I think yeah, just trusting your network too.
Great. Next question is, how did you respond and prepare to cold calls? So I believe they're referring to in class, you get randomly selected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would always just read the material and just, you know, do the work. And yeah, I would always just be prepared to be called on. I guess y'all were in law school more recently. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the only way is, I mean, you can't like practice in front of your mirror about like someone asking you. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's really the only way is just be prepared.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's also knowing that the professor is trying to stump you in a way, or they're trying to highlight something in the case. So a lot of people don't get it right. And again, going back to like imposter syndrome, there's certain people that like can roll with that and they're like, oh yeah, no big deal. Like, you know, I totally knew that's what he meant. And there's some people that are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just embarrassed myself in front of 200 people. And so it's just like being somewhere in the middle where you're okay with rolling with it and, you know, trying your best, but it's nothing to worry about at all.
Next question is it true that you need to go to law school where you plan to practice law? If I don't know where I want to practice law, is there a general place that would be best to go to? So I think the first question is up.
So in Louisiana, you know, we have an Napoleonic Code. We're very different. And so I think that if you don't, you're probably not going to end up in like New Orleans or Louisiana, maybe if you hadn't planned on it. I think California, it sounds like, you know, the bar is a little bit different. But I think that most states are pretty, you know, I think that those are unique situations. I think most states, it really matter where you go to law school to take the bar. So yeah.
All right. And then, someone said that they would also love more advice on selecting a law career. So that's very open-ended.
Yeah, I mean, I can start on that. I think when selecting a law, I mean, I would say whatever you choose now, it might change. I mean, it's changed for me twice already. So I think if you can do something that you really like, that's great. I mean, if you can be in at least in an industry that you like, I think that always makes the work more interesting. So if you're really into sports, like perhaps you can do, you know, corporate transactions relating to sports. I think if you know if you really like the health field, doing things data privacy in the health field also helps. So I think choosing a career, I think going into law school, I mean, even your first year courses, we only could choose one like kind of non-standard course. And even then, as I said, it just always changes. So I think if you can somehow yeah, I mean, you might get different access to different things, but I think it's going to change. And whatever you do in your first year of law school is not going to really be industry or practice specific. So,
And, you know, you're introduced to a lot of new concepts in law school that you probably, you know, weren't even aware of. Like, I remember when I first took intellectual property, you know, I found it really interesting. And so I think just like taking different, you know, law school courses can help, you know, gauge like what you're interested in. And then just, once in your third year, I guess you kind of maybe figure it out. I think that you can have this idea of what you plan, and then, life just kind of happens.
Yeah, and I think just talking to as many attorneys as you can, both before law school and in law school, is really helpful, because you just don't know what's out there, and until you've asked everyone. And you can never ask everyone, but you can ask a lot of people. And for me, when I was in high school, I did mock trial, so I definitely thought I was going to be a litigator and wanting to be in the courtroom all the time. And then I worked at a litigation firm when I was at Vanderbilt, and was like, oh, absolutely not. This is not for me. So I think it's just, experience, but also talking to attorneys and just saying, hey, what's your day-to-day like? Because, even though my clients are really interesting and doing really interesting things, like Erin said, the work isn't always interesting, and you're kind of doing the same type of work for a lot of different types of clients. So you have to make sure you like the work and not just the area, because there's obviously sexy areas of the law, but the work you're doing, especially as a junior, might not be that interesting to you. So you just want to make sure, that's what you want to do, so that when you do have those late nights or the work's not that exciting, you're like, okay, end goal in sight, this is for me.
All right, well, it looks like we did not get any more questions, so I'm going to go ahead and submit this survey. Students, if you will please fill this out for us so we can continue to make this event better for you each year. Thank you so much to the alumni for joining us tonight and giving us all your insight, your advice, and really just sharing about your experience both in law school and at Vanderbilt. I am truly grateful. I would do it a round of applause if we could, but as we all know on Zoom, it just doesn't go well. So we'll just.
I just want to add, if anyone wants to send me an email or have any questions after this, please feel free to. I don't know if Sarah Whitney gives our email information, but I'd be happy to answer specific questions or anything that any of the Vanderbilt students need.
Yeah, and I would too.
Yep, same. So
perfect. So any students, if y'all want any of their information, feel free to email me tomorrow. And I will share that out, making sure I don't have any last announcements for you. If you'll just make sure to fill out that survey, that will be great. And also check out VU Connect. We have a whole students tab for more alumni and student events. And opening doors will actually start next week for freshmen, and then we'll move on to industry. So thank you again to our alumni. I really appreciate your time. And everyone have a great evening.
Thanks, guys.